clicked his mandibles together in what his human colleagues had learned to recognize as contentment. The research vessel Harmony's dawn hummed quietly around him as it drifted through the outer edges of the collie sector. 3 years he had worked with humans now, and they had proven to be pleasant companions. Strange, yes, but pleasant. The humans were soft creatures, really. No natural armor like no venom sacs, no razor-sharp limbs, no ability to survive in vacuum even for a moment. They were fragile things that needed constant temperature control, regular feeding, and sleep for a third of every cycle. Had initially wondered how such a species had ever survived long enough to reach the stars. But they had their qualities. They were clever with tools. They worked well in groups. And most importantly, they seemed genuinely interested in peace. The Galactic Council had been skeptical when humanity first applied for membership, but 3 decades of cooperation had eased most concerns. Humans, it seemed, just wanted to explore and learn. "Could you come to the bridge?" The voice belonged to Commander, the human military liaison assigned to their mission. Had grown fond of over the years. The human was methodical and calm, always thinking before acting, very like in a way. Made his way through the corridors, his 6 legs carrying him smoothly across the deck plating. The bridge was small, designed for a crew of 12. Currently, they had 8 aboard, 4 humans and 4 studying stellar phenomena in this remote region of space. "What have you found?" asked as he entered. Doctor looked up from her console, her face showing that expression humans made when excited. She had explained once that it was called a smile. "We've detected something unusual. An old space station, abandoned by the look of it." Moved closer to examine the data. The station was large, easily 3 times the size of their vessel. The design was unfamiliar, but the material's signature matched records of the Eth, a civilization that had gone extinct nearly 2,000 years ago. "We should report this to the Council and move on," said immediately. His species had survived millions of years by being careful, by avoiding unnecessary risks. Unknown situations were dangerous situations. "But think of what we might learn," said, her eyes bright. "The Eth were incredibly advanced. Their technology could teach us so much." Commander studied the scanner readings carefully. "The station appears stable. No power readings, no life signs. It's just floating there." "Which means it's safe to explore," added Minyu, the human engineer. He was usually quiet, but had noticed he spoke up when something interested him technically. Felt uneasy, though he couldn't say exactly why. The station looked dead, yes, but dead things should be left alone. That was basic wisdom. Still, he knew humans well enough by now to know that once they were curious about something, they wouldn't let it go easily. "I advise caution," said finally. "We should scan it thoroughly before boarding." "Of course," agreed. "We'll do a complete sweep first. If anything looks wrong, we'll leave immediately." They spent the next 2 hours scanning the station from every angle. The results were consistent. No power, no life signs, no radiation beyond normal background levels. The station was a ghost, floating in the black. "It's safe," declared. "We should at least take a look." Wanted to argue more, but he knew it was pointless. Humans were curious creatures. It was one of their defining traits. They always wanted to know what was behind the next door, over the next hill, inside the next mystery. It had made them excellent explorers and scientists, but suspected it had also gotten many of them killed throughout their history. "Very well," he said, "but we take full safety precautions. Suits, weapons, and we stay together." "Agreed," said, already moving to prepare the boarding team. An hour later, 6 of them stood in the airlock, ready to cross to the station, and 2 other humans named and made up the human contingent, while and 2 of his colleagues completed the team. They all wore environmental suits and carried standard plasma pistols, though doubted they would need them. The station's docking port was still functional, which surprised everyone. It sealed properly with their airlock, and the door opened smoothly when Minu bypassed its ancient controls. Inside, the station was dark. Their suit lights cut through the blackness, revealing corridors that stretched away in multiple directions. The walls were covered in symbols none of them could read, though their translation software was working on it. Temperature is stable, reported. Atmosphere is thin but present. Something is maintaining basic life support. But our scans showed no power, said, his unease growing. Backup systems maybe, Minu suggested, running on some kind of reserve power we couldn't detect from outside. They moved forward slowly, their lights sweeping across empty rooms and abandoned equipment. Everything was coated in dust. It really did look like no one had been here for thousands of years. Then stopped at a doorway. Look at this. They gathered around. Beyond the door was a large chamber filled with cylindrical tanks, each one large enough to hold a creature the size of a human, or larger. Strange tubes connected them to the ceiling and floor. A laboratory, said quietly. His translator had finally processed enough of the symbols on the walls. He read them aloud, his voice shaking slightly. Biological weapons research, unauthorized, project terminated by council order. The words hung in the air like poison. We should leave, said immediately, now. But it was already too late. Behind them, something in the darkness released a sound that was half roar, half screech, and the lights in the chamber began to turn on, one by one. The creature emerged from the shadows like a nightmare made real. It stood 12 feet tall on 4 powerful legs, its body covered in plates of bioengineered armor that gleamed dully in the growing light. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with rows of teeth designed for one purpose only, killing. His mind went blank with terror. This was wrong. This was all wrong. His species had evolved on a peaceful world with no large predators. They had never needed to learn how to fight because nothing had ever hunted them. Fear, for his people, was a paralyzing thing. It froze the body and clouded the mind. He couldn't move, couldn't think, could barely breathe. The creature lunged forward with horrible speed. One of his colleagues, a young named, was in its path. There was a terrible sound of tearing metal and screaming that cut off too quickly. When the creature moved away, was no longer alive. Heard his own voice making a high-pitched keening sound, a distress call that meant absolute terror. His legs wouldn't respond to his commands. His body had simply shut down. Then he heard something that cut through his panic. Commander's voice, calm and level, speaking with an almost casual tone that made no sense given what was happening. Contact, large predator hostile, cover left corridor, get to the door controls with me, stay down. The humans moved, but the way they moved was wrong. They didn't run in panic. They didn't freeze in fear. They spread out with purpose, their weapons coming up smoothly, their bodies low and balanced, like they had done this 1,000 times before. The creature charged at. The commander didn't retreat. He fired 3 shots at its legs, forcing it to stumble, then dove to the side in a roll that brought him back to his feet in one fluid motion. The creature was fast, but was faster in a way that seemed impossible for such a fragile species. Armor plating is thick, called out, his voice still eerily calm. Aim for the joints and eyes. Another fell, killed by a second creature that appeared from a side corridor. Wanted to scream, wanted to run, but his body still wouldn't obey. He was aware, somewhere in the back of his frozen mind, that he was about to die. Then was there, pulling him backward with surprising strength. Move, we need to go now. But even as she pulled him, she was firing her weapon with her other hand, each shot placed with careful precision at the first creature's leg joints. Her face showed no panic, no terror, just focus. More creatures were emerging from the tanks. The lights revealed dozens of the cylinders, and things were moving inside them, pushing against the glass. This is a nest, said, her weapon tracking movements in the shadows. We're in a breeding chamber. Fall back to the docking port, ordered. Fighting withdrawal. Minyu, you're on point. Everyone else covering fire. They began to move backward toward the exit, but it wasn't a panicked retreat. The humans took turns firing while the others moved, then switching positions. It was coordinated, practiced, like a dance they all knew. His body finally began responding to him, but only because was physically dragging him. His mind was still screaming, still locked in terror. How were the humans doing this? How were they functioning? A creature got too close to. The human pilot dropped his weapon and pulled out a knife, a simple blade that looked like a toy compared to the monster. But when the creature lunged, moved into the attack rather than away from it, sliding under the snapping jaws and driving the knife into the soft tissue under its jaw. The creature thrashed and held on, pushing the blade deeper until the thing stopped moving. Then he calmly retrieved his weapon and kept moving, like he had just done something routine. His mind couldn't process it. The human had fought a monster in close combat, had chosen to get closer to it. That was insane. That was suicide, except it had worked. They reached the corridor leading back to the docking port, but more creatures were coming from that direction too. They were surrounded. "We're cut off," Minyu reported, still in that same calm voice all the humans were using. "Alternative routes?" asked. "Two corridors to the right lead to a secondary airlock," said, checking her suit's scanner. "But we'd be going deeper into the station." "No choice, move." They ran, but even running, the humans maintained their formation. Minyu in front, clearing the path, and on the sides covering the flanks, and bringing up the rear, with and his one surviving colleague between them. The creatures followed, their screeches echoing through the corridors. There were at least 6 of them now, maybe more. Each one was a perfect killing machine, built by the long-dead Eth for purposes didn't want to imagine. They burst into a large chamber filled with equipment, and immediately the humans began moving again without being told. Minyu went to the door controls, trying to seal it behind them, and took defensive positions. Did a quick scan of the room, looking for exits, threats, advantages. And checked on, her hands gentle as she made sure his suit hadn't been damaged. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Couldn't answer. He was too busy staring at her face, trying to understand what he was seeing. Her eyes were different than they had been on the ship. Wider, more alert. Her breathing was faster but controlled, and there was something in her expression that he had never seen before in 3 years of working together. She looked like a predator, they all did. The humans weren't afraid, they were angry, and realized with a horror deeper than what the creatures had caused that he had never truly understood what humans were. He had worked beside them, eaten with them, laughed with them, but he had never seen them like this. He had never seen them hunt. A creature smashed through the door Minyu had been trying to seal. The engineer pulled out a tool from his kit and threw it at the creature's face. It exploded in a bright flash of light and heat, blinding the monster and driving it back. "Just a plasma torch," Minyu said with a slight smile, "but it works." The smile was the worst part. He was smiling. Understood something then, something that made his blood run cold. The humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were starting to enjoy it. They moved deeper into the station because there was nowhere else to go. The creatures had cut off every route back to their ship. His rational mind knew they were going to die here. The odds were impossible. 6 humans and 2 against an unknown number of bioengineered killing machines. But the humans didn't act like people about to die. They acted like people with a plan. "The secondary airlock is 3 corridors ahead," said, checking her scanner as they moved. "But there are life signs between us and it." "How many?" asked. "At least 4, maybe 6. "We can handle 6, said simply. Wanted to scream at them. They couldn't handle 6. These weren't simple animals. These were weapons designed to kill, but the humans just kept moving forward with that same terrible calm. They passed through a room filled with broken equipment and old computer terminals. Minyu paused, looking at something on one of the screens. "Wait," he said, "this is interesting." "We don't have time," said. "Make time. This is a control room for the environmental systems." Minu's fingers moved across the controls with practiced speed. "I can override the life support in specific sections, vent the atmosphere or flood areas with gas." His expression changed, had learned human faces well enough to recognize it. The commander was thinking, calculating. "Can you map out where the creatures are?" "The system is old, but yes, there are heat signatures throughout the station, a lot of them." "Show me." Minu pulled up a display. Red dots filled the screen, scattered throughout the station. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Felt his fear spike again. They had walked into a nest that was far larger than anyone had imagined. But just studied the map with that same calculating look. "Can you seal off sections? Create barriers?" "Some areas, yes. The blast doors still work." "Do it. Create a path to the secondary airlock. Seal everything else behind us." Minu nodded and started working. His fingers flew across the controls, and throughout the station, ancient doors began to move. Could hear the grinding of metal as sections were sealed off. "Done," Minu said. "We have a corridor, but it won't hold for long. Those things are strong enough to tear through eventually." "It doesn't need to hold long," said, "just long enough." They moved out following the path Minu had created. The humans moved differently now. Noticed it in the way they held their weapons, the way they checked corners. They weren't just defending anymore. They were hunting. A creature appeared ahead of them, blocking the corridor. Instead of falling back, moved forward. She fired at its legs, making it stumble, then threw something small at it. The object attached to the creature's armor and started beeping. "Down," she said calmly. Everyone dropped. The explosion was small but focused, blowing a hole through the creature's armor plating. It fell, twitching. "Improvised explosive," explained as they moved past it. "Made from power cells and medical supplies." She had made a bomb from their supplies, while running for her life, and she said it like she was discussing the weather. They encountered two more creatures, and handled them with the same disturbing efficiency. The gentle scientist who had spent hours teaching about Earth poetry shot one creature in the eyes until it couldn't see, then calmly walked up and finished it with precise shots to what she somehow knew were its vital areas. Realized something that made him feel sick. The humans were learning. With each encounter, they were getting better at killing these things. They were adapting, finding weaknesses, sharing information with each other in short, quick phrases. "The armor is weaker on the underside," called out. "They're blind on the right side," added. "They hesitate before jumping," noted. They were studying the creatures even while fighting them. Even while running for their lives, they were learning how to kill more efficiently. A creature cornered in a side passage. He had gotten separated from the group, turned around in the chaos. The monster approached slowly, as if it knew he couldn't fight back. His body locked up again, the paralyzing terror of his species taking over. This was how he would die, frozen in fear, unable even to run. Then was there, appearing from nowhere. But he didn't shoot the creature. Instead, he moved between it and nothing in his hands but a plasma knife, a tool barely 6 inches long. The creature was 12 feet of armored death, was a 6-foot human with a knife smaller than some of the monster's teeth. "Come on then," said quietly to the creature. The monster lunged, moved, not away, toward it. He slid under its body as it jumped, the knife flashing out to cut through the weaker armor on its belly. The creature's own momentum did the rest, its weight tearing the wound open as it landed. It thrashed and screamed, but was already rolling away, coming back to his feet in a smooth motion. He waited, knife ready, as the creature bled out. He was smiling, just slightly, but it was there. "Are you okay?" he asked, offering a hand to help him up. Took the hand but couldn't speak. He couldn't reconcile what he had just seen with the calm, methodical commander he had worked with for 3 years. That person wouldn't have engaged a monster with a knife. That person wouldn't have smiled while doing it. But this person did. This person had chosen to fight up close when he could have shot from a distance. This person had looked at a killing machine and decided to engage it in close combat. This person wasn't trying to survive. He was trying to win. "We need to keep moving," said, his voice back to that professional calm. "The others are waiting." They caught up with the group at the secondary airlock. Minyu was working on the controls while the others covered him. More creatures were coming, their screeches getting louder. "How long?" asked. "2 minutes," Minyu replied. "We don't have 2 minutes," said, firing at shapes moving in the darkness. "Then hold them for 2 minutes," said simply. And they did. 5 humans against dozens of creatures, and they held the line. They fired, they moved, they covered each other, they adapted. When one ran out of ammunition, another stepped forward. When one was pressed too close, another created space. Watched them and understood something terrible. The humans weren't fighting desperately. They were fighting efficiently. This was something they knew how to do, something they were built for. Humans were predators, not the kind that relied on claws or venom, the kind that relied on intelligence, coordination, and the absolute refusal to give up. The kind that ran their prey to exhaustion across endless plains. The kind that looked at every other species on their planet and decided they would be the ones who survived. The airlock opened with a hiss. "Go," ordered. They piled through, and Minyu sealed it behind them. The creatures hit the door seconds later, but it held, for now. But they weren't safe yet. They were deeper in the station than ever, with more creatures between them and escape than before. And realized he wasn't afraid of the creatures anymore. He was afraid of the humans, afraid of what they had become, afraid of what they had always been. The secondary airlock led to a docking bay, but it was empty. No ships, no escape pods, nothing but open space beyond the force field that kept the atmosphere in. They were trapped in a dead end with the creatures still coming. Immediately tried to contact their ship. "Harmony's Dawn, this is Commander. We need immediate extraction. Our position is the East Docking Bay, Sector 7. Static answered him. Then a voice broke through, distorted but recognizable. "Commander, this is Harmony. We're reading you. Dispatching rescue shuttle with security team. ETA 15 minutes. Understood, we'll hold position." 15 minutes. Knew they wouldn't last that long. The creatures were already working on the airlock door behind them. The metal was beginning to buckle under their assault. Knelt beside, checking a wound on his carapace that he hadn't even noticed he had received. Her hands were steady as she applied medical foam. "You're going to be okay," she said softly. "How can you be so calm?" asked, the words finally breaking free. "We're about to die and you're all acting like this is normal." Paused, then gave him that expression humans called a sad smile. "It is normal. For us, anyway. Humans have been in situations like this for hundreds of thousands of years. We evolved doing this." "Evolved doing what?" "Dying." "No, surviving when we shouldn't. Humans are very good at not dying." She finished with his wound and checked her weapon. "We're afraid, I'm terrified right now, but human fear works differently than yours." Before could ask what she meant, the airlock door burst open. 3 creatures poured through, moving fast. The humans opened fire, but these monsters had learned too. They moved erratically, using cover, splitting up. One got past the defensive line and charged straight at him. Stepped in front of, firing steadily, but the creature kept coming. It was too close now. Too fast. Then another human arrived, coming from the rescue shuttle that had just docked. He wore a medic symbol on his suit and carried a weapon twice the size of the standard pistols. His name tag read. He didn't hesitate. He fired the heavy weapon point-blank into the creature's face, the impact throwing it backward. Then he walked to where it lay twitching and fired again, making sure it was dead. "Sorry I'm late," said cheerfully, helping up. "Traffic was terrible." More humans poured out of the shuttle, 6 of them in heavy armor carrying military-grade weapons. They formed a defensive line with practiced ease, and suddenly the creatures that had seemed so unstoppable were being driven back. "Status?" asked the leader of the new arrivals. "Multiple hostiles, armored predators, high aggression," reported. "We've lost 2 crew members." "Understood. We'll secure the area, get your people on the shuttle." But even as they began to move toward the shuttle, could see more creatures coming. Dozens of them, pouring out of corridors throughout the docking bay. The heat signatures Minu had detected earlier, all converging on their position. "That's a lot of targets," observed, still in that casual tone. "We can't fight that many," said, his voice cracking. "Sure we can," said, loading something new into his weapon. "Might take a few minutes, though. Commander, you should get the to safety." Nodded, fall back to the shuttle, fighting retreat. Heavy weapons give us suppressing fire. The new arrivals opened up with their larger weapons, and the effect was immediate. Creatures that had shrugged off pistol fire were torn apart by the sustained fire, but there were too many of them. For every one that fell, 2 more appeared. Grabbed and started pulling him toward the shuttle, firing one-handed as they moved. Behind them, could hear the other humans calling out targets, coordinating fire, supporting each other. And they were laughing. Some of them were actually laughing. "Are they insane?" demanded. "Probably a little," admitted. "Adrenaline does weird things to humans, makes some people giddy." He pulled behind cover and checked him over with quick, efficient movements. "You're in shock, normal for in-combat situations. Your species never evolved to deal with this kind of stress." "And humans did." Gave him a strange look. "Humans didn't just evolve to deal with stress. We evolved to thrive on it. You know what happens to a human body when we're afraid? Our heart rate increases, pumping more blood to our muscles. Our pupils dilate so we can see better. We stop feeling pain as acutely. Our reaction time improves. We become faster, stronger, more focused." "That's impossible. Fear should make you weaker." "For you, maybe. For us, fear makes us sharper, better. It's a combat enhancement built into our biology." Fired at another creature, hitting it in the eye. "Every human body is designed to turn fear into power. We're natural warriors, whether we want to be or not." An explosion rocked the docking bay. Saw Minu and working together, rigging charges on support columns throughout the bay. "What are they doing?" he asked. "Collapsing the bay," said calmly. "We seal the creatures in, we escape, everyone goes home." "But that's insane. We're in the bay." "We're near the exit of the bay. Important difference." The other humans were already falling back to the shuttle, firing as they moved. The creatures were closing in, but the heavy weapons were keeping them at a distance. Barely. "Charges are set," Minu called out. 30-second timer. "Everyone on board," ordered. "Now." They ran. His legs worked this time, driven by terror and survival instinct. The humans moved around him, making sure he and the other made it to the shuttle first, practically through the door. The last human was, sprinting for the shuttle as the creatures closed in behind him. He dove through the door just as the timer hit 0. The explosion was massive. The supports gave way and part of the docking bay collapsed, crushing creatures and sealing off the entrance. The shuttle was already moving, piloted by, threading through the debris field with impossible precision. They hit open space and the shuttle's engines roared to life, pushing them away from the station. Behind them, more explosions rippled through the structure as the charges Minu had set throughout their retreat all detonated. The station began to tear itself apart. Inside the shuttle, the humans began to check each other for injuries, their movements routine and efficient. They talked quietly, professionally, like they had just finished a training exercise rather than barely escaping death. sat in stunned silence, his mind trying to process what he had witnessed, sat down next to him and handed him a drink container. "Water," the medic said. "You're dehydrated." Took it with shaking hands. "How can you all be so calm?" Considered the question. "Because this is what humans do, we survive. No matter what the odds are, no matter how scared we are, we survive. It's what made us the dominant species on Earth. It's what got us to the stars." "Your world must have been terrifying." "It was, still is in some places. Earth made us what we are. It shaped us into survivors." Smiled, but it was a sad expression. "We're not warriors because we want to be. We're warriors because we had to be. Every human alive is descended from the ones who refused to die." Looked around the shuttle at the humans, seeing them with new eyes. They weren't the gentle, curious explorers he had thought he knew. They were predators who had chosen to be peaceful. And that choice, he realized, made them more terrifying than any creature could be. Because predators who choose peace can also choose war. The Harmony's dawn felt different when they returned. The corridors were the same, the walls the same, the quiet hum of the engines unchanged, but saw it all differently now. He saw the humans differently. The medical bay had patched up everyone's wounds within hours. Human medicine was remarkably efficient, something had never really appreciated before. Now he understood why. A species that fought as much as humans did would need to be good at healing. Found him in the observation deck 12 hours after their return, staring out at the stars. She had changed out of her combat suit and back into her civilian clothes, a simple blue shirt and comfortable pants. She looked exactly like the gentle scientist he had worked with for 3 years. Except now he knew what was underneath. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down beside him. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," admitted. "I thought I knew you, all of you, but I didn't." Nodded slowly. "I understand. What you saw on that station, that's not who we are every day, but it is part of who we are. It's always there, just underneath." "How do you live with it, knowing you're capable of such violence?" "The same way we live with knowing we're capable of great kindness. Humans are complicated. We contain multitudes, as one of our poets said." She looked out at the stars. "Every human you meet is capable of terrible things, but they're also capable of beautiful things. We choose, every day, which side to show." The door opened and Commander entered, carrying 2 cups of tea. He offered one to, who took it hesitantly. Chamomile said, "It's calming, I thought you might need it." This was the same man who had fought a 12-foot monster with a knife. Now he was serving tea and being thoughtful about it. His mind struggled to reconcile the 2 images. "I need to understand," said. "Your species evolved to hunt, to fight." Sat down across from them, cradling his own cup. "Yes, humans are persistent hunters. On Earth, we weren't the biggest or the strongest or the fastest, but we could run. We could run for hours, days if necessary. We would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion." "That sounds horrible." "It was effective, but it was more than that. We learned to work together, to communicate, to plan. We learned to use tools, and we learned something that most predators never do. We learned to adapt." "Other species adapt," said. "Not like humans. We adapt culturally, not just biologically. We can change our behavior in a single generation. We can learn from mistakes. We can imagine scenarios that haven't happened yet and prepare for them." Sipped his tea. "Every predator on Earth hunted the same way for millions of years. Humans changed tactics constantly. We became the ultimate adaptive predator." "And then you killed everything else," said quietly. "Not everything, but yes, most of the large predators on Earth are extinct now. Saber-toothed cats, cave bears, dire wolves, they couldn't compete with us." His expression became somber. "We're very good at surviving, too good maybe. By the time we reached the industrial age, we were the only apex predators left on our world." Menu and entered the observation deck, followed by End. They all looked tired but relaxed, back to being the friendly crew members knew. They gathered around, some sitting, some standing, all nursing drinks or snacks. "We heard you had questions," Minyu said with a slight smile. "Figured we should all be here for this conversation." "I don't understand how you can be both," said, gesturing at all of them. "How can you be gentle scientists and also efficient killers?" "Because being good at killing doesn't mean we want to kill," said. She was eating a cookie, looking completely peaceful. On the station, she had been making improvised explosives. Humans spent most of our history fighting to survive. Fighting nature, fighting predators, fighting each other. But we also spent that history taking care of each other. We evolved to be both violent and compassionate. Your world shaped you this way. Earth is what we call a explained. By galactic standards, it's incredibly dangerous. Whether that can kill you in minutes, predators everywhere, diseases, poisonous plants and animals. Humans evolved in an environment where everything was trying to kill us. That explains the violence, but not the kindness. Spoke up, his voice thoughtful. We needed both. A human alone would die on Earth, but humans together could survive anything. So we evolved to be social, to care for each other, to work as teams. The most successful humans weren't just the strongest fighters. They were the ones who could make friends, build alliances, inspire loyalty. "We're pack hunters," added. "We take care of our pack. That's built into us just as deep as the hunting instinct, maybe deeper." Thought about what he had seen on the station, the way the humans had protected each other, the way had stepped in front of him without hesitation, the way had come back for him when he was cornered. "You were protecting me," he said slowly. "All of you. Even when I was useless, when I couldn't help, you still protected me." "Of course we did," said, looking surprised that he even questioned it. "You're our friend, you're part of our crew, that makes you pack." "But I'm not human." "Doesn't matter. Humans are really good at deciding who counts as pack. We can extend it to anyone, any species, any background. If we decide you're one of us, you're one of us," she smiled. "That's our superpower, really, not the violence, the cooperation." Leaned forward. "I need you to understand something important. What you saw on that station, that's not who we want to be. That's who we can be when we have to be. But we spend every day choosing not to be that. Every single day, billions of humans wake up and choose peace over violence. Choose cooperation over competition. Choose kindness over cruelty." "Why?" asked. "If you're so good at violence, why choose peace?" "Because we know where violence leads," said quietly. "We've fought enough wars to know that everyone loses in the end. We've seen enough death to know it's not glorious or honorable, it's just sad. We've been violent for so long that we understand, better than any peaceful species ever could, why peace is worth preserving." Minyu nodded. "The Galactic Council was afraid of humans at first. They thought we'd be conquerors, but they didn't understand. Humans don't want to conquer. We've already conquered our own world and learned that winning doesn't always mean you're better off. We want to explore," said. "We want to learn. We want to make friends and discover new things and build something better than what we had before." "We want peace," added. "Real peace. The kind we've only really had for a few centuries of our history. We like it. We want to keep it." Looked around at all of them, these strange, contradictory beings. They were apex predators who chose to be scientists, warriors who preferred diplomacy, killers who valued life. "The galaxy thinks humans are weak," he said, "because you're peaceful." "Let them think that," said with a slight smile. "It's better than the alternative." "What's the alternative?" "That they understand what we really are. That they realize humans are peaceful not because we can't be violent, but because we choose not to be. That scares people more than actual violence does." Thought about standing on that station, watching the humans fight. He had been terrified of the creatures at first, but by the end he had been more terrified of the humans. Not because they were cruel or enjoyed killing, but because they were so good at it, so efficient, so natural. "I was afraid of you," he admitted quietly. "On the station, I was more afraid of you than the monsters." No one looked offended, just reached over and patted his carapace gently. "That's okay," she said. "Sometimes we're afraid of ourselves too. That's why we work so hard to be better, to be the version of humanity that deserves to reach the stars." "Do you think you deserve it?" asked. Considered the question carefully. "I think we're trying to. Every day we're trying, we make mistakes, we fail sometimes, but we keep trying. That's very human too, the refusal to give up even on ourselves." They sat together in silence for a while, watching the stars, realized something important. He had been wrong about humans. He had thought they were gentle explorers playing at being civilized. Now he understood the truth. Humans weren't pretending to be civilized. They were choosing it. Every moment of every day, they chose cooperation over conflict, peace over war, kindness over cruelty. And that choice, made by billions of individuals across hundreds of worlds, was what made them truly remarkable. Not their capacity for violence, their capacity to choose not to use it. "I'm glad you're on our side," said finally. The human smiled. "We're glad you're on ours," replied. And realized that was the most important thing about humans. They always thought in terms of sides, of teams, of packs. They were terrifying predators when threatened, yes, but they were also the most loyal friends in the galaxy. You just had to be part of their pack. And was grateful, more grateful than he could express, that he was.